Well, good morning, everyone. Evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Good to have you back. Welcome to iPad Advanced for Breeze. I'm going to turn my volume down here. One sec. Yeah, it's nice and early here in Brisbane. It's about 5 a.m. I've been up since 3 a.m. to get ready for this, so I'll be looking forward to going back to bed when I get home. Anyway, enough about that. So today we're going to look at iPad, a few more advanced features. So some of the things I want to cover off today, some interface elements, how we can use video for interface screens, particularly videos with alpha transparency. I want to have a look at using the AI background removal tool, which is really cool stuff. I'll give you a plug, Jürgen, since you're in the group. Jürgen has an excellent plugin, AI plugin tool for DSLR Remote Pro, and I believe support for the iPad app is coming very, very soon, if not already. I want to have a look at a few tricks with props. I want to have a look at some survey stuff and how you can do some cool things with surveys. And we'll touch on event codes, and obviously if you have any questions along the way, just post them and I'll try and answer them. Yeah, cool. Jürgen, it'll work soon. Excellent, good to know. So for those that didn't catch the beginner class, at the end of that class I showed a couple custom interfaces that we'd done in Breeze, so I'm going to run through one or two of those now, just so you can get a bit of an idea of what is actually possible in the app. So I'm just going to cut over to my iPad here. So this is the setup we have for our own internal use. So when we do our drop-off or unattended iPad rental, this is our setup here. I just want to exit back. So the first thing, which is a really powerful thing with Breeze, is that you can basically fully white label the app, and that's included in the price. You don't have to pay additional for that. So if you can recall, when you normally first load Breeze, this screen here is all point that way, is all Breeze branded, but you can actually quite easily change these screens yourself. So if I just jump into the Files app, and if you didn't know, the Files app on your iPad is basically where Breeze stores all the event assets once they're downloaded. So you can jump into Breeze Booth, into Assets, and then within here you'll see basically all your screen files and settings for your profile or event. So the point I was getting to is that there are these screen startup background, this one here, and there's another one, startup background _ logged _ out. So the good thing is you can design your own screens, and these screens will then basically, if we come back in the Breeze, will be displayed here, there, over there, wherever. And basically you can remove the Breeze branding, which is pretty good stuff. You can also tweak the colors of the buttons up the top, so where you've got settings, events, camera, status, etc. You can also tweak that in this file. Go back one. This file in here. So again, yes, it's a bit breezy, so it's XML, but in here there's some options. If you read about a third of the way down this page, menu label color, login status label color. So here you can actually change the color of those links up the top of the screen. You can also adjust the alpha transparency. So if you really want, you could actually remove them altogether by dropping the alpha on them. The feed seems to be working for me, Michelle. Maybe it's at your end, but someone else let me know if it's stopped. So yeah, so basically you can totally tweak tweak this screen to really custom brand the app, which is pretty great stuff. The other good thing is, as I pointed out, oops, go back. If we come into here, you can have a logged in version and a logged out version. So basically, what that means is when there's a user logged into the Breeze app, it will display this screen. If there's no user logged in, we have it display this screen. Now, you don't have to do it this way, but the way we have it set up is that it prompts our clients to enter the username and password. So that way, when because we're unattended, and basically we're trying to minimize the contact we have with our clients when they have the booth. If for whatever reason the iPad app has been signed out, they don't need to call us because it'll just display on this screen. So if I jump back into the iPad app itself and I just sign out here, once it signs out, now it's basically prompting the user to log back in with the username and password. Now, the good thing about the way username and passwords work on Breeze is that you can actually have what's called a trusted username. With a trusted username, basically, let's just put it another way. If the username is not trusted, then whenever someone uses that username on a new device, essentially you have to authorize that username to be accessed from an unknown device. So that means I can give out this username and password to the world, but if you go to log in on your particular device, I'll need to authorize it in the back end. So that makes it sort of a secure way to give people the username and password without having to worry about people stealing it. Now, another neat trick, if we come into the settings while we're talking about username and passwords, is that there's an option here that says must be signed in. So this ensures that you can't run an event unless there's a user signed in. And that's important because if you're not signed into Breeze, after you've taken 10 images for the day, it watermarks the images. So this basically just removes the risk that someone might sign in, might use the Breeze app and forget to sign in, and then they run a whole event with watermarked images because it's running in demo mode. So because I'm not logged in, and I go to hit the start button, it's saying you're not logged in, sign in, try again. So it's actually stopping me from logging in, from running the booth completely because I'm not logged in. I'm just going to try and help Michelle for 1 sec. Try refreshing page. Okay, so I'm going to sign in. Okay, so I'm signed in. So it should be able to start. That screen will disappear. So it should be good to go. So I'll hit the start button. So the way that we have the iPad app set up is specific to our particular use, and we have our clients basically do a survey before they even start using the booth. This is essentially to do a condition report, much like when you hire a rental car, where you have to walk around and sort of tick if there's any damage on the car. So we want people to do the same sort of thing because our iPad business is completely unattended. So they go, let's go, and then we make them go through the whole kit and let us know if there's something missing or if it's damaged or if it's all good. So we can say it's all good. Top of the legs are damaged, bottom's okay, batteries are missing. That's all good. Okay. So they have that survey. Basically, that information then comes through to us in the office, and we got some sort of record of whether or not the kit was in okay condition. I'd say if there's issues with the live stream, I think it's just Facebook and the fact that the whole world is at home live streaming everything. Okay, so now that we're in, we have basically this is the custom interface that we built. So I'll start up the top here. We have we put in a button here for the queue. So this is basically the upload queue. So we'll show you whatever emails are stuck in the queue, or if you're uploading to a gallery or to the cloud or Dropbox, you'll see what's what in the queue. Under settings, we basically have this simplified camera menu. So in our unattended iPad business, we don't want to give our clients full access to the camera. We don't want to give them all the controls, because we're dealing with people that don't really know what they're doing. So we've created a simplified menu where basically it's brighter and darker. So I can go bright, 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 or I can adjust the exposure down to something like that, or I can hit the reset button to bring it back to normal. The good thing about this is that gives me the ability to customize the screen. So we've also put in these little examples down the bottom to give clients an idea of what an underexposed and overexposed photo looks like, because we're dealing with the general public and they don't know these things. So this is really the great thing about Breeze, and where the flexibility comes in, is that you can build these really tailored interfaces based on what you're wanting to do. Up the top here, we've also got a resync button. So if we make any changes to the event, it means that we can refresh the event. And we use event codes, which we'll touch on, which is a way to load the next event. Let's hop down out of here. Down the bottom, we have our props. I'll take my glasses off. So the way props work in Breeze, or can work in Breeze, is that you can assign a prop to each person, a different prop to each person in the image. So if there's 5 people in the photo, you can have these 5 props that are currently selected will automatically attach to the 5 people into the image. So the way we have it set up is more like prop packs, I suppose. So you just have people pick a pack, and then anyone else in the image gets automatically assigned one of the other props. Okay, but I'm going to turn props off for this one. We then have a simple menu just for color in black and white. There's a whole bunch of other filters you can do for Breeze, including making your own. And I was running a class on that later on the week. But the cool thing about Breeze, and this works in DSLR Remote Pro as well, is that you can make your own custom color filters. And if you do the class, I'll show you how you can even steal filters from Instagram and Visco and basically any other photo editing program and bring it into Breeze, which is pretty cool stuff. So we'll run through just a simple boomerang session. So I've got custom countdown screen that uses a video with alpha transparency. Okay, and then our sharing screen, custom keyboard with the option to put in three different email addresses, along with shortcuts to email domains. We can hit send. Okay, so that's a very quick look at how we have it set up in our business, and just to show you something completely different, I'm going to load in a completely different interface. This is the one for KFC. Okay, so now I've put in loaded a different interface, and I should, if I just update that here. So now I can switch to basically a full KFC branded version of the app as well. So this is something we did for KFC. So sort of as far as they're concerned, they have their own sort of white labeled version of the app that's all sort of custom exactly to them. So we'll just start again. I'll just do a boomerang. This particular setup, they have a choice of frame overlays. So a lot of the screens in this one are done with videos to get some of these sort of transition effects. Okay, so let's have a quick look at we'll come over to the desktop here, and we're going to have a look at this KFC event so you can sort of see how this is made up. So it's obviously the same way Breeze sort of does all the things. All the interfaces are made up with a whole series of screens, which I think you probably all mostly be familiar with. What the biggest difference is in the iPad app compared to DSLR is that you can use videos with alpha transparency. So you can see here this is a video with transparency. So that's how we're sort of getting that effect when it counts down, goes 3, 2, 1, and the red sort of drops down before the photo is taken. So to make these videos, there are a couple little tricks. To do transparency is the HEVC format, which is sort of a new video format that Apple has sort of released. Well, HEVC is relatively new, but alpha transparency support I think is quite new. That does mean you're a little bit limited as to how and where you can make these video files. So as far as I'm aware, it's currently only supported creating these basically on a Mac, not PC. So we make our animations in Apple Motion or Apple Final Cut Pro, and then export with QuickTime. So if I open this file in QuickTime, let's bring this over here. So here's my one of my videos. Okay. When you create the video in Apple Motion or Final Cut Pro, you need to export it as a ProRes 4444 file format. That then outputs a very high-res video with alpha transparency. You then need to open it into QuickTime Player and export it as a 4K video. And you need to ensure that you have enabled use HEVC and preserve transparency. Now there are, I think, some other ways you can make transparent videos without having to use QuickTime, without having to use Apple Motion or Final Cut Pro. I do believe that you can take a series of PNG images with transparency and load them into QuickTime and export a video that way, but I've not actually tried that. I think as time goes on, I would imagine Adobe will properly support HEVC in their apps as well, and then it will make creating these videos a lot easier. But being able to use video makes for a lot more engaging interfaces. Now, if you don't want or don't need transparency in the video, then you can just create a standard video and export it as a QuickTime file. I think maybe even MP4. I'd have to be sure. Definitely a QuickTime file will play back just fine, and you can make that on, making that on a PC should be no problem. So really, this interface is just how we would design a normal one, except we've just thrown in these video screens to sort of make the interface a little snazzier, and the transparency I think really adds a whole sort of new dimension to it. So I think that's kind of cool stuff. And it's the same. I'm going to find my mouse. Just come back to our Selfmatic interface. So you can see here the countdown transparency. You can also use GIF files for countdowns, but GIFs do not support opacity. So basically, you can have a transparent area or not, but you can't have varying degrees of opacity. So if you look at this video here, just pause that right there. You can see how the background sort of fades out from top to bottom. You couldn't do that with a GIF. Basically, it would either have to be fully transparent or fully not transparent. The opposite of that, opaque. I don't know, whatever. So GIF files are okay, but and they're certainly easy to make. But I don't think you can do as cool stuff with a GIF file. Okay. All right, so that's one way to sort of snazz up your interface with video files. Then the rest of it is basically fairly simple stuff. So if I just jump back to the iPad for 1 sec, I'm going to go back to my Selfmatic event. Okay, so a feature of the iPad version that's not in DSLR Pro is this idea of menus. So you can have basically sub-menus of additional functions. So you could certainly have your prop selection on this main screen here, but if you have a lot of props or just sort of want to neaten up the way that you display it, you can put them into a sub-menu. So the iPad version has these menu screens. This is what this is. And also, if I tap up on settings, is what this is. And you can have up to 4 different menu screens. And the menu screens are designed, it's just simple graphics. So if we have a look here, this is my menu screen for my props. So it works similar to how you design a keyboard, in that you have one version that is the selected version, so when you tap on a button, what it displays, and then you have the unselected version. So that's what the menu looks like when you haven't sort of selected anything, and this is what it looks like when you have. And so it's the same principle for my other settings menu here, where I've got it just like that. So these menu systems allow you to design, I guess, this is where you can start designing things that are quite custom to your needs, but also allows you to sort of tidy up the interface as well. So let me just go back to the event editor. So if we have a look at that in the event editor, we come into touchscreen actions, we'll see our menu here, menu 1 selected there. So it works in terms of designing it really just the same as any other touchscreen. It's just that you get a certain set of actions that you can apply to the menus. So you can't add any touchscreen action. There are some limits as to what you can, but a lot of all the effects, like the filter styles, you can add the mirror effects, props, and things like syncing events and event codes and things like that, and also linking to other menus. So you could theoretically sort of build a menu system that sort of links one to the next if you have something quite complex. Yeah, so I find menus are a great way just to sort of tidy up the interface and build something that feels more like your own app rather than the developer's app. The next thing I wanted to quickly touch on is the background removal stuff, because I think that's really powerful, and I know a lot of people have been asking about it, and it was pretty popular at the Photo Booth Expo when we were showing it. So I want to show you how that works and how to set it up. So there's a couple things that you need to do to get going with the AI background removal. The first thing we'll do is come into the iPad app. If we just exit out, quickly update that one. That's better. So if we come into settings, and if we scroll right down to the bottom, the only thing you need to do is put in your background removal key. So at this point in time, you can get your background removal key from remove.bg themselves. GadBooth offer a service, and Jürgen also has his background removal service. Now, essentially, these guys, I suppose, are all offering the same thing. It's just that they offer them at maybe different price points. So the most expensive way to get the background removal is through remove.bg themselves. I think you're much better off using, say, Jürgen's plugin and his API key. But basically, the background removal is not free. You do have to pay per image, because what's happening is when you take the photo, it's uploading to their servers, it's being processed, and then it's coming back down. And so they do charge for that. You know, I think maybe about 10 cents an image, or maybe less, just depending on how many credits you buy. But for now, in this example, I'm just using the remove.bg key. So you just go to their website, sign up, and you can chuck that in. So you need to put that in there. Once you have that in there, you can then hit this button that says check background removal key and credits, and then it will show you how many credits you have left. You also get a bunch of free preview images a month as well, but they save out as lower quality, probably not good enough to output. So once you have that set, then you need to do it this way. In the event editor, you need to come into the Photos tab, and then you need to select to enable the remove background feature for your event. So obviously you can turn it off, you can use the smaller preview size images, or you can do the full size images. So I'm just going to keep it at preview for the sec. And then lastly, in your print layout, you need to obviously have a background image. So you can import a background image, or you can copy the file into your folder of assets. All right. So once we have that, and we OK that, and we'll come over to the iPad, and we take a photo. All right, so it's taken the photo, it's going to process it, and there we go. So it's basically taken that photo and quickly uploaded it online, and it's returned me a version without the background, and that works pretty well. So I might just try that again, just so you can see. I'm going to swing around to something with a slightly busier background. See, it usually works pretty darn well. Yep, look at that. So the background removal tool is, you know, it's pretty good stuff. And you know, we did with the DSLR version, we did a big job for Calvin Klein just recently, where we had the photo booths were just literally in the middle of the shopping center or shopping mall, with no backdrop, with just the busiest background you could ever imagine, and it removed the background like perfectly just about every time. So it's really quite amazing stuff. So that's really all there is to it for the background removal. You just need to sign up to the service. So like I said, there's a few options through remove.bg themselves, through Jürgen at photobooth-deluxe.de, or Gadbooth does it as well. So I'll post some links to those online. So yeah, works really well. Obviously, currently, well, it doesn't work on burst GIF, mostly because a burst GIF is made up of, you know, 10, 15, 20 images, and it'll be too slow to process that. But who knows, maybe that'll change in the future. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to have a look at, I'm going to load me back to our KFC example. Okay. All right, so with this KFC example that we've got here, basically when I hit start, it gives me the option for the four frames here. Now, traditionally in Breeze, you would have to do this with profiles, which is a little bit, you know, a bit more time consuming. But in the iPad app, this can now be done using a survey, which I think, generally speaking, is much easier to set up. So I'm going to have a look at how we set this up, and then how that survey can basically dictate what frame gets applied to the overlay. And then we're going to look at some more, I guess, extreme examples of what you can do with that as well. So we'll jump over to the PC here, and we'll go into the event editor. And I need to open up my KFC. Events here. Okay, so what we want to have a look at is, here we go here. So basically what I've done is created a survey to do this screen, and the survey is just made up of two images. Let's open it up. Yeah, I'll do it here. Yeah, come in here. Sorry, going the long way. Where are we? Survey. Oh, here we go. Yep. Okay. So the survey screen is just two images. It's basically what the screen is going to look like when you haven't selected something, and what the screen looks like when you have selected something. So we've just got like a slight whitewash when you've selected it. So once you add those two screens in and call them the correct terminology, which is survey1 _ keyboard _ lowercase and survey1 _ keyboard _ lowercase _ pressed. This is all in the manual. Then basically you just need to come into the event editor here, and then come into the touchscreen actions and select your keyboard 1 screens here. So what we're going to look at is how we set this up. So I'm just going to remember the name. Okay, I'm just going to quickly delete what I've done here, and I'll show you from scratch. Okay, so what we're doing is creating radio buttons, and radio buttons are new to iPad. Well, not new to iPad as such, as in they've always been there, I think, from day one. They're not in DSLR Remote Pro, but they are in the iPad version. Radio buttons are really useful for surveys. So basically, it allows you to have a group of choices, and you can only select one option. DSLR Remote Pro only has checkboxes, so you can't have two checkboxes and ensure that someone can only select one of the options. People could theoretically tick two checkboxes, whereas a radio button, if you have two options, you can ensure that they can only select one of the options, which is what we want to do here. So we come in here and we say add radio button, and we need to group them. So because the surveys are quite flexible, you could have multiple questions on the page. So in this case, it's asking to choose your overlay, but you could also be asking another question like, what's your favorites? What do you prefer, original or hot and spicy chicken, or something like that? And that would be a separate group. So we need to give this a name. So we're going to call it overlay. And then we need to create a button ID. And so the ID is basically just what option are we selecting. So this one here is the zinger. And we OK that. And we just make this a big button around that whole frame. All right. So we add another radio button, and it's the same group because it's the same question. So you could think about the radio button group more as what's the question. And this one is taco. Okay, well, another one. What's the question? It's overlay. Whoops, need an ID. This one is gravy. And this one here is overlay. And I think it is spicy. Okay, we also need an OK button. The OK button is, if I just add a new one, is a key action. and the key action is OK in those triangle-y bracket thingies. Okay, so we've got that. So now we've got that set up. Okay, so we've saved that. So now we'll just OK all that and save it, and we'll just pop back over to we'll come over to this one, I think, to the iPad, and we'll just refresh that, and we'll see if I got that right the second time round, or if I broke it. So I've got all that right. Yep, that all works correct. Okay, good. So let's quickly run one through. So that's one part of it. We've set up the survey, but it looks like I've changed something, so you can see how it hasn't applied the overlay. So we'll have a look at that and see what's going on there. Now that we have that survey set up, we need to come back into here, and under Photos, there is an option here that says Overlay Background File Name Suffix, and same under Slideshow. Burst GIF is the same as well. Overlay Background File Name Suffix. Yes, Jürgen, this is only one survey PNG file, I think. Just keep watching, and hopefully it makes sense. I'm going to show two examples of this, a simple one and a more complex one. So this is the simple one. So what we're saying is the overlay background file name suffix. So what's that doing? So normally, when you apply an overlay to your artwork, so let's have a look at, let's just jump into a more normal event. So let's have a look at my GIF overlay. Yep, so this is just a standard GIF overlay, and the file name is GIF underscore overlay. We're all, I think, relatively okay with that. What's happening here in when we're using this suffix is that we're appending the survey results to the overlay. So now we have GIF overlay. Probably don't need to show you there. GIF overlay underscore gravy, GIF underscore overlay hot, GIF overlay underscore taco, GIF overlay underscore zinger. So now we have variations of all our artwork, and you can see it here for the overlay file. We've got underscore gravy, hot, taco, zinger, and slideshow GIF gravy, hot, taco, zinger. So basically we're using the answer, the survey question answer, to tell Breeze to use a specific version of the artwork. And we're doing that by setting this suffix to basically return the survey answer. So it's survey 1, it's a radio button, and we're using the overlay question. So basically it all relates back to here. It's survey 1, and if we edit the radio button, it's overlay, and what it's going to output is zinger. So when we select this one, we're going to use any artwork that's got underscore zinger attached to it is what Breeze will use when it's selected. Any artwork that's got underscore taco attached to it, it will use that. Now my mistake was in this particular one is that spicy is the incorrect name here. So if I have a look at my artwork, it's not actually spicy, it is actually hot. So I need to come in here and change this one to hot. So because it can't find, because it couldn't find overlay underscore spicy, it didn't put any artwork on the image. Now, if you want, you can start getting into more complex setups of this, where you could basically use probably an if statement that says if, for example, if the guest didn't select any option, if they just sort of skipped that screen, you could put like an if in here that basically says if no answer was selected, then default to a particular overlay file. So there's full token and string support in here, so you can start doing some more really quite complex things with this. And this is a much easier way to apply overlays rather than having to use profiles to do it. So let's see if I actually fix that. Whoops, I'll bring you to the iPad. Okay, so we'll go here and we'll hit the hot and spicy one. Yep, and now we have the hot and spicy overlay. If we choose taco, we'll get the taco. Overlay. Okay, so that's sort of like a simple version of using surveys to produce, I guess, a simple selector tool. So I want to have a look at a slightly more complex version of that to show you how flexible it can really be. So I'm going to load in a different event here, which I think is going to be this one. Okay. So this is the demo that we had at Photo Booth Expo for anyone that came. So this one basically asks 3 questions and then creates the background based on the answers to the 3 different questions. So let's have a look how it works. So it's asking me to choose my spirit animal, so I'll choose unicorn. What's your guilty pleasure, hot dog or hamburger, burger, and choose your drink of choose. Well, this is an old version with typos in it. We'll say cocktail. And then I put in my email, and we'll go to the next screen. So it's going to take the photo. Okay, so we've got a processing screen here, which is just a video that we're running while it's actually running the artwork. So what's happened here is that we're also using the background removal tool, and if you look carefully, basically the background is actually my survey question answers. So the artwork that we're using here, including the overlay and the background image, will all change based on my survey answers. So let's do this again with a different set of answers. We'll go lion, hot dog, beer. And if you pay close attention to the output artwork, you'll see that it has those answers in it. Okay, so you can see lion, hot dog, beer in the background there. And it's also using a different artwork for the overlay. So that's pretty powerful stuff when you think about it, and there's a lot that you can do with it. So now you can basically ask people a series of questions, and not only just be collecting data on that person, but you can also have it affect the output of the image or the GIF as well. So let's have a look at how that works in the back end. So we'll open up that event. And so first we'll dive into the touchscreen actions. So we've just got our basic interface as normal. And then we've got 4 surveys, but the 3 main ones we want to look at. So our first one is just the choose your spirit animal, and again this is just made up of the 2 images, the pressed and not pressed version. And these are radio buttons, just like we did with the KFC. So basically the group is spirit for spirit animal, so the question is what's your spirit animal, and the answer is unicorn or lion. And then if we come to survey 2, it's choose your guilty pleasure, and if we have a look, same deal. So the group is guilty, and the ID is hot dog or burger, and same for the drink. So the button group is drink, and there's beer or cocktail. Okay, so that's our basic setup for the survey. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. Then what we do, okay, and this is basically a more complex setup of this. So because we have 3 questions, basically we need to append the answer to those survey questions to all the artwork. So if we come back and just have a look at how we've got the file set up. All right, so let's have a look at, here's my background images here. So the name of this file is background underscore line underscore burger underscore beer, and then we have line underscore burger underscore cocktail, line underscore hot dog underscore beer. So what this means is that you basically have to create every variation of the artwork. So if we have a look at this one bigger, we've got beer, line, hot dog. Close. If we look at this one, we've got line, hamburger, cocktail. And if we look at this one, hot dog, beer, line. So we've got every possible combination of those answers as the artwork. And we can do the same thing here with the overlay files. We've got by having a different overlay based on what question, how they've answered the question as well. So to set that up in the event editor, basically it's really what we did just in the KFC example, except now we're just adding each of the the 3 surveys to the suffix. So we've got survey 1 underscore radio underscore spirit, then underscore the survey 2 answer, then the survey 3 answer. So basically when we select our options, it's just returning, hot dog, beer, unicorn, etc. And so that's how we do it that way. Now, obviously, the more questions you have, and the more answers for each question you have, the more artwork you're going to have to create as well. So it does require some careful planning, because these things sort of, it's a permutation. So like the amount of work can grow exponentially. And we had an event we were going to do before coronavirus destroyed everything, was for the FA in the UK, where they basically wanted people to be able to choose 6 football players from a group of 26 players. Of course, what the client hadn't really thought about is that that meant there was about 177,000 possible combinations. So even though on the surface you think, oh well, basically it couldn't be that many, but it actually is, because of maths and science and stuff that I'm not very good at. So there's a lot of flexibility with using surveys to do this sort of thing, but you still need to rein it in a little bit. Otherwise, you will burden yourself with a lot of work. And I've got another example here, which I'll just show you in the event editor, if I can remember which event code it was. Not that one. Nope. I should have. I reckon it's going to be. Nope. Let me just find it. Just give me 2 secs. Chat amongst yourselves, because it's the one we did for Amazon. Not that one. Not that one. I don't know what I've done with it. Anyway, I'll put it up in the group if I can find it. But basically, when we did this survey, set up one for Amazon, it basically there was a few hundred combinations of the answers, which in hindsight was probably too much. So yeah, it's powerful stuff, but you don't want to with great power comes great responsibility. The last sort of thing I wanted to touch on, and it's probably a couple things. I just want to touch on them more so than going into great detail, because these things probably take a little bit more to get your head around. But the first thing is how we get our events from our server here in the office to our iPads. I'll switch back to something you can see my pretty face. We'll go here for a minute. So the easiest way to get going, as I've explained in the beginner course, is to use Dropbox, and you can basically get your files from your PC to all your iPads via Dropbox, and that works fine. But there's another way you can do it, which allows for more advanced sort of setups, and also reduces your reliance on third-party services. And I guess it's always been one of Breeze's strengths, I suppose, is to create a sort of an open platform that doesn't lock you into doing things in one particular way. So on the iPad, if I just jump back here for a second, this one, that's my exit button. Oh, there we go. So if we come into the settings, normally most people would be running it with Dropbox like this. However, you can use your own event server, so you can host all your events on your own website, and you can upload them to your own website using, say, an FTP program or GoodSync that'll just keep files from your PC sort of in sync with your website. That means you're sort of creating your own Dropbox of sorts. So the connection is then between the iPad and your web server, and then your web server and your PC. Or you can actually go one step further, which is what we do, and we actually have installed a web server onto our PC in the office here. If I can show you, we use I'm just using XAMPP, which is basically just an Apache server which runs on here. If you're not comfortable with this sort of thing, then probably wouldn't suggest doing it. But if you are, this kind of thing is really quite powerful. So I run it here. So basically, what that means is on the iPad, I am just pointing my event server directly at the server here in the office. So I'm no longer even using a third-party server. The connection between all my iPads is now direct between iPad and my office server. And that also makes syncing events particularly fast as well. So if I the speed of which it downloads files, even outside of the office, is actually just a lot faster than using Dropbox as well. But the thing that I like about it is that I'm also now not reliant upon a third-party service like Dropbox to ensure that my system stays up. And not to pick on the fine folks over at SnapPick, but when they had their outage last year or the year before, because the servers basically went down, that's something you can totally avoid with Breeze, because you can set this up multiple ways. In fact, you can have Dropbox. You can basically replicate your setup, so you can have sync into Dropbox as well as running off your own server. And should you need to, you can just switch between using the two. So you could have things syncing to both, and then if your own server is down, or vice versa, you could just come into your settings and you can change between syncing to Dropbox or syncing from your own server. So you have basically a level of, I guess, redundancy built into Breeze that you just don't get with other products. If you're the kind of person that likes total control over what you do, then you'll definitely get that with Breeze as well. Now, the other thing that is really powerful with Breeze is the ability to use sync codes. So you've probably noticed in this demo, I haven't been loading my events through here. I've been putting in a unique code for each event that I load. And we've done this largely because of our unattended iPad pickup drop-off service. So the way it works in our business there is that we keep our photo booths in the storage facility, and in the storage facility we have cages. Each cage has a padlock, or not a padlock, but a keypad on it. And that keypad, the client gets given a unique code to unlock the cage. That code that they use to unlock the cage is also their event code in Breeze. So the one code opens their locker to get the photo booth, and that one code also downloads their event into Breeze. So when we first started doing iPad stuff when we were using another product, we found the idea of having clients select from a list of events, sort of like how this works, really wasn't ideal. And it wasn't ideal that one time where we had a wedding select an event we had going on simultaneously for Adidas, and they ran their entire wedding with Adidas branding over the whole thing. So really that got me thinking about there must be a better way, and I sort of worked quite closely with Breeze to come up with this sync code idea. So it's sort of it's not too hard to get your head around, and it is in the, if you go to the keyboard and survey section in the user manual, it is actually all covered off there. But you possibly haven't seen it because it's probably not where you're going to be looking for the sync code stuff. But essentially, the way it works in principle, I'll just come back to here. So these are all my events, and each event has a unique code. It can be any code. I have it set as a 6-digit code, just numeric, but it could be letters and numbers. It could be, it can be actually anything you want. But we just use it as a code so it matches our locker system. But essentially, what happens is the best way to do it is you set up a master code, and your master code, I suppose, is sort of like your default assets. It's like your master copy of all your screens and your profiles if you're using them, and it's your baseline. So what happens is if I just jump back into here and put in my master code. Let's see if I have, I'll just use that as my master code. Okay. So for me, the master code sets me back to my baseline. Okay. So then whenever I enter in another code, so example, what's going to happen is it's checking against essentially that master folder, and it's only going to download the images that it can't find in that master folder. So if we have a look at this folder here, okay, so it's basically going to compare this folder to this folder. Now when you look at it on your PC, they've essentially got all the same files in there. The only files that are different are the artwork. So all it's doing when I enter my event code, it's looking at this folder here and saying, well, this screen exists in the master folder, that screen exists in the master folder, I don't need to download it, don't need to download that one, or that one, or that one, or that one. And then when it gets to the overlay artwork, that one and that one, it goes, that file doesn't exist in the master folder, so I need to download that one. So all that's happening is when you enter the event code in, it's basically saying, go look in the folder that ends with this particular number and compare it to the master folder, essentially, and download any files that aren't there or are different. And so it's not re-downloading all the images, it's just downloading the things that are missing. But what happens is, if from here I enter the KFC event code, all the files are different, so it's going to download all the KFC files. So it's checking, and now it's pulled down all the image files from that. So in the Files app, basically it's sort of keeping everything, it's only downloading into this one folder. So all these images in here get replaced. So this is the portrait folder, because it's just what I call it. If I come back here, and if I load, so this one, you can see it pulling all the files down. If I come back into, should be in the portrait folder again, so that same folder has now just been replaced with all my Selfmatic images. So if I load another Selfmatic event, all these files will remain, and it will just change the overlay file that's been uploaded. So it's worth jumping into the user manual for that one and just having a bit of a read through. The only extra bits that you really need, aside from how you set it up, is a special sync keyboard. And your sync keyboards are really the same as how you set up any other keyboard. It's just two images, so that's my event code. And then we can look at it in this one. Keyboard sync. Yep. So it's just the code here, and there's just a special text ID that you need, which is a sync code that has to match, so it knows that this is a sync code. And then on the iPad, just exit out of here. In your settings, you basically just need to tell Breeze that you're using the sync code. So what's going to happen here is that it's looking in the codes folder, which I'll just get back to on here. So Breeze is looking at the codes folder, which is this one here, and then it's going to automatically add in the sync code to the end of that based on what you've entered on that sync code keyboard. So when you put in that sync code into the keyboard, it's basically dynamically changing the event server to look for that folder. And then it's comparing it to the previously loaded sync code. So it's requires a little bit of, I guess, thought and planning to get set up with sync codes, but once you do, moving around Breeze with them is just like a lot easier, and we find it's just a much better experience for our clients that use the booth. And when we do attended iPad booths, which we don't do that much of, to be honest, but when we do, we still have our staff use the event codes as well. Yeah, so that's a quick look at using event codes, and I think I was, yeah, pretty much going to wrap it up about there. So if anyone had any questions on that, let me know. I can answer them now. Otherwise, you can ask away in the group, and I'll try and jump in and answer them. But hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. You can see sort of the some of the flexibility in Breeze, I suppose. So you really can create these very customized apps and a very customized way of rolling out the app as well across your fleet. So to me, you know, the more control I have of our setup, the better. I don't like putting my trust into third parties at all. At least when things go wrong, I know what's going on. Sometimes when things go wrong with a third party, you're sort of just waiting to see what they say to find an answer. Yeah, I also hope that event code will come to DSLR, and there's a bunch of things in the surveys. You know, some nice improvements to the way survey works and keyboards I'd like to very much see come across to DSLR Remote Pro. But, you know, I think, you know, I can't say exactly what the future is of all the Breeze products, but I think, you know, for me, I've always believed that iPad is the future, and I think we'll, you know, in time, we're going to see, you know, proper camera support for iPads and proper printer support without needing Windows servers and things like that to make it happen. Camera settings. So in Breeze, I didn't really show this. I showed this in the beginner class, but you can basically have full camera controls here, where you can control your contrast, saturation, and vibrance, and you can use auto exposure. So when we do unattended iPad setups, we pretty much set it into auto settings like this, and then we have our we give our clients just access to a simple brighter, darker type setup in here. For events that we man, we give we have full access. We give ourselves full access to the camera settings. So I mean, look, there's no right or wrong, and I mean, normally the auto settings actually gives you a pretty good starting point. So if you do that, you can say, well, it maybe should be about that. So the iPad cameras compared to DSLR are obviously not as good. They're also a bit more sensitive in terms of the settings, so you can't push some of these things like the ISO too high, otherwise the image becomes quite grainy. So I don't know, it's not quite like with the DSLR where I could say, well, if you're shooting with a studio flash, for me, I know that we shoot at about 400 ISO, a 200th of a second, and f11, and that's a pretty good, that will work pretty much on any SLR camera that's using a studio flash. With an iPad, it's different because the ambient light really affects the output a lot. So I don't think there's any, set and forget settings for that, other than to use the auto, auto settings. Any other questions? Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up there. I've got a separate video version of this recorded as well that I'll get uploaded and emailed out hopefully later today, because I think this live one may have been a bit choppy in places. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Jump into the comments in the group if you've got any questions, and we can chat further. Thanks guys for joining me.